Hello, everybody. How are we? This is Michael, and I am excited about today's Experience Friday Live. And I'm coming to you in a hotel room again, which means we do the lighting dance on Friday morning. So I've built up hopefully enough light, but it looks like I'm a little bit in a dark place with a spotlight. So get to enjoy that today. Shawn sends his regards. He was not able to join us today because of some family commitments. So you get me. But today is having Hannah Williams back for the third time by popular demand, and excited to have that conversation. We'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. But first, some big picture stuff. Talking about why the heck we're here. We are here because it is important for us to talk about experience ecosystems, because experiences matter for the people in the world. And our hypothesis is that if we can get companies to work with the people and touch points and systems that come together to create their experience, and they focus on humans while they do it, that it's not only just a thing where it's good because people are happy. They actually can make more money and have more business success. And in the end, we're all in business for some kind of reason to make some kind of impact on the world. You want to make a bigger impact? Let's go. Let's create some experiences. We are in the holiday season, of course, and so we're taking the next 2 Fridays off because of the holidays, but we're going to come back the week after, and if all goes well, that we'll have Hannah back for her 4th installment, and we'll talk a little bit more about the 4 parts of her book, but that's what's on the schedule. So look forward to that in January, and we have a huge January lineup. The only other big announcement right now is that if you have not signed up for our conflict management course, navigating conflict for good, this is your time. It's online. It's going to be 3 90-minute segments, so it's absolutely possible. The differentiator here is that a lot of navigating conflict courses are about your response and how you can look at conflict by following some certain steps. And what we do in this course is we actually do an assessment, a validated assessment called the conflict dynamics profile. And that is a behavior-based conflict navigation tool. And so what we look at is both our triggers for conflict and then how we navigate it as a human. And every time I've taught that class, it has been absolutely game-changing for the people who take it. Light bulbs just go off, and they come back and say, this is going to make a difference, not just in my work, but in my family life as well. So looking forward to that. All right, are we ready? We're ready for Hannah. Hannah is no stranger to us now, of course, because she's been with us twice before. But if this is your first time with her, Hannah, her story began in a blue pickup truck when her father handed her 12-year-old self the phone and asked her to help close a deal on an investment property. So after she had this quick immersion into the world of entrepreneurship, she found herself thrust into a climate of innovation, challenge, opportunity as she enrolled in college at 14, graduated with a degree in international business at 18. Now she is a Gen Zer who is tearing it up in the world, and she's both consulted with businesses and has her own business going to help folks manage how to work with this really amazing next generation that is different and throwing us some curveballs and has a lot to teach us. So if you have not gotten her book, it's called A Leader's Guide to Unlocking Gen Z, Insider Strategies to Empower Your Team. And that's what we're basing off of that's what we're doing right now and going through these 4 sessions with her. So let's welcome Hannah to the show. Hey, Hannah, how are you?
Hey, Michael. I am great. And I actually just finished shopping for a Christmas gift for my very much Gen Z sister who wants bubble tea kits for Christmas. Have you ever had bubble tea before?
I have had bubble tea.
Yeah. So my 12-year-old sister is obsessed with bubble tea, and she likes the type that's not the taro bubble. She likes the popping ones, like where you can get
Oh,
mango or passion
yeah, yeah,
fruit
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah, yeah,
one of
yeah,
those.
yeah,
So I've
yeah.
been searching on Amazon and even looking at, some international suppliers, world market and whatnot, to see if I can find her a bubble tea kit. So we'll see how
I
that goes.
I feel like you might be compiling your own bubble tea kit
Oh,
on
I would
Christmas
totally
Eve.
would. Totally.
Yeah.
You can buy apparently some different milk teas and like drink mixes
Mm-hmm.
to do.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen someone spike bubble tea, but I bet you could.
I bet you could. Maybe not when you're 12 years old, but yeah, I bet you could. Yeah, and I think that's a whole nother interesting conversation about Christmas gifts shifting from stuff that you wrap and put under the tree to experiences, right?
Absolutely.
So she's already wanting to build a bubble tea herself. She's not looking for a gift certificate to go get some. She's
Oh,
looking for
absolutely.
the tools to experience doing it herself. And the more
And
you
sh
pay attention to that, it's out there.
Absolutely, and she actually my mom took so I know I've told you before, but I'm the oldest of 7, so I have a bunch of
Hmm.
younger siblings. So my younger 3 sisters took a cross-country trip with my mom this summer, and they spent, I believe it was 3 months, and just traveled from where we are in North Carolina over to California, and then they flew back. But on the way, they got introduced to, every type of food and cuisine that you can think of in America, from, going down to the South and to, Santa Fe and to Austin, and trying different types of El Salvadoran and Mexican and Spanish
Wow.
foods. And then she fell in love, I'm assuming somewhere in the West, with, different Pocky sticks, different types of Asian snacks. So you can go to Asian
Yeah.
grocery stores.
Yeah.
So anyway, so she's gotten her cultural experience, and now she wants more of it back home.
Wow, that's fantastic. Fantastic. And we need more of that. That's the way it should be, right?
For sure.
Absolutely. So let's jump into where we are on this journey with you learning about Gen Z folks. And anyone watching on LinkedIn or anywhere else, throw some comments here, and whatever questions you have for Hannah, let us know, and we'll be glad to put those in front of her. And if you're watching later on a video, reach out to us and we'll work with you as well. So in your book, Hannah, you talk about 4 stages, and it's attract, recruit, retain, and engage. And so we've already talked with you about the attract and the recruit, which is still super interesting to me because isn't that the same thing, right? But it's not, it turns out. So here we are at retain. So we've talked about how you position yourself to look good, or to be attractive, right? And how to bring people into the fold. But once you bring them into the fold, you got to keep them. And that's, the changing workforce right now, plus Gen Z. There's a lot going on retention right now. So in a nutshell, why are companies struggling to retain Gen Z folks? Why is it challenging for them? It shouldn't be that hard, right?
Well, this is this is such a broad ranging question, and there's so many reasons. And for anybody listening, if you're a business owner, or are part of an HR team or learning development, wherever you stand, you probably are struggling right now with retention among all ages. That's
Yep.
just what we're dealing with right now. But what's interesting about this question, Michael, is I've been doing a lot of thinking about, what we're all calling the Great Resignation, and how we've added labels to this idea that suddenly everyone across the world has realized, oh my gosh, I never stopped to think about my life and about what really mattered. So what's interesting to me is, I've obviously seen this coming for a while, that there was going to be something. I didn't think it'd be a pandemic, but something that would happen that would rip the Band-Aid off of bad culture. And that's when I look at the Great Resignation, what I see is not a lot of people suddenly realizing that they're discontent. I see a lot of people suddenly realizing that there's more to life,
Mm.
that they are, it doesn't matter again what age they are, but they're suddenly realizing that what they've been putting their time and effort toward is not what matters. And they've realized that money is not the ultimate goal. And honestly, it's just an unveiling of the culture that actually exists below the surface. Because what a lot of my friends witnessed when last year happened was leaders who suddenly turned on them in a sense, and instead of encouraging them through the difficult time, suddenly started talking about, oh my gosh, we're our profits going down, we're not selling as much, and it was go go go, hit everything harder. And that ended up creating a lot of friction within teams. So all this being said, to answer your question about why are companies losing Gen Z, is that the things that are being exposed right now among all generations with the Great Exit and the resignation, this underlying culture and lack of experience, or the poorly crafted experience, you could say, is what Gen Z has been looking for this entire time. But for most people, they were in a career, say 5-10 years with a company, and it was just last year they realized this isn't worth it. For Gen Z, we have the incredible ability, because we are young and we're just now graduating college and we have access to different opportunities and a broad range of education, we're getting to select those companies before making a decision to commit for 5, 10, 15 years. So it's almost flipping the table on its head. And that's why I'm glad we talked about attracting and recruiting on the last 2 sessions, because retention pairs so well into both of those things. And I would love to talk about an example, because I was actually sitting in Barnes and Noble yesterday, and I'm in the cafe, and I can't remember the last time I've, gone to sit in a Barnes and Noble and, had a coffee and worked from there. But I did it yesterday, and there's one about 10 minutes away. And I sat there for about 6 hours and was just observing people coming in through the store as the day went on. And, of course, the first thing I noticed when I walk into the store, into the cafe, is that they're understaffed. The cafe, had maybe 2 employees and a fairly long line. So they're dealing with hiring struggles. And as I sat in the cafe, of course, the employees were nice, but they were obviously overwhelmed, overworked. And the customers who came through during my 6 hours there, I could count at the moment I started writing it. I wrote a LinkedIn post about it, but the moment I was sitting there working on this post, I counted 14 native analogs who were there and 2 native digitals. So there were 2, besides me, 2 students sitting there working, and everyone else who came in was, over the age of 50, roundabout. So in bringing this back to retention, this whole picture that I was having is, most companies don't realize how much their customer experience impacts their retention. They don't realize that when a Gen Zer who again does not distinguish the physical world from the digital world, when we see a company that's struggling with whether it's profitability or the ability to modify their experiences or their content creation or their thought leadership, and they don't have a presence that is reputable in our mind, we don't identify with that brand as an employee either. So if we're working for you and you don't have a brand that's growing and scaling and that we can see, the experience is great for customers and we love being a customer of that business, we are likely to see the job as a temporary job. We're likely to see it as, oh, it's just a stepping stone until I can get somewhere better, instead of seeing that company as the place I'm proud to work at and I want to be for the foreseeable future.
And that's across all industries, is right. So that is a frontline worker at, to your point, a retail or coffee place, or a server at a restaurant, all the way to, a major corporation, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It impacts. I was actually having a conversation with one of my clients a few months ago, and we were talking about this interesting dynamic that's happening that's even different between Gen Z and millennials. So she hosts an intern program every year at her company where they bring in, great talent from the schools around them, and they introduce them to the world of, hospitality management and all these things. Well, every year, this intern program has I think there were maybe 15 interns, and they have a program day where the general manager of their, resort takes off an entire half day to come and train these interns, in how to build your resume and how to manage people. And basically, what you would think probably for you, Michael, you're like, oh my gosh, this busy person, right? General manager
Yeah, you
takes
can
off
work for a
half a day.
company and never see that CEO.
Right. So this general manager, he took his day to come and really pour into these interns. Well, the
Wow.
problem was the reason that this client came to me and was like, "What is going on?" The problem was that these interns the entire time were so disengaged. Like
Mm,
so flat out disengaged. And she asked me, what's wrong? Like, what did we do wrong?"
it's a great question.
It's so different from, the millennials I had in the past years where they'd come in, at least they would ask questions, even if they didn't know what was going on, at least they'd ask questions. And my response to her, I thought for a second, and then I put myself in that intern's shoes. And what I could imagine if I were sitting in that room and I was an intern of that company and the general manager came in and took half a day off, I might think, well, that's interesting, but what's he really teaching me? And, I
Mhm,
asked her about the subjects and she said, well, it's things like resume writing and all that.
mhm.
And my thought was, I could walk to the bathroom and have a bathroom break and pull up TikTok and in 2 minutes learn the same information.
Mm,
Like
mhm,
this generation, my generation, on top of the fact that we have access to education like no other generation, if I took a, lunch break and I Googled this general manager and I didn't find him anywhere online, looked at his social media profiles and there wasn't anything there, I don't
mhm,
inherently have any respect for his credibility.
mhm.
My generation, in talking about, that physical digital, the inability to separate, same
Mhm.
thing happens with your credibility as a person, as a business owner, as a leader. If I can't find you actively on social media, what you're teaching me is not very relevant. So when this comes back, and I know I'm long story longer with all this, but the point being that when you're trying to retain Gen Z, there are a lot of factors that go into this, but one of the key things to at least acknowledge on the front end is the power that your brand and what you do to attract talent and how well that aligns with your retention strategy. It's not, we look all great and we hype you up and we sound really good when we attract and recruit you, and then you become an employee and it falls completely off. That
Yeah.
type of thing that's happening in corporate America is a sure strategy to get Gen Zers walking out your door.
And I wonder as well, as you know, what I do as a very proud Gen Xer is I take what my natural inclination would be and I turn it and go the other direction to understand how to work with millennials or Gen Z folks, right? So that's always my starting place. So I would think that if this, important person came in, I would like want to be with them because I want to be them someday. And I don't know that that's true for Gen Zs, right? That they're not looking at that person in that office and going, oh, I'm going to pay attention here because at one time I'm going to be that person and I'm going to make their money and I'm going to have their influence and I'm going to have their office. That's just not a driver, right? Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's
It
huge.
At least it's not a driver in the same way it was, because you're right.
Right.
If you're sitting as an intern and the ladder up in the company is I
Hmm.
start as an intern, then
Yep.
I work as a
Yep.
coordinator, and then I get into manager, and that ladder path is no
Hmm.
longer enticing.
Yeah.
So if the general manager, if we see him stressed out all the time and we see his work life balance all, gone, and we see his him getting
Hmm.
divorced or whatever it is, we see that that life path, we have no interest in that. This is a job for us for maybe 2 or 3 years until we can get our social media up to the point where we can earn income off of it or where we can travel. And of course, that is a very broad painted swath. Not every Gen Zer has that goal, but you're right in saying that from a Gen Zer's perspective or a native digital's perspective, there is not the same honor or the same enticement attached to the
Right.
types of roles or
It could
positions.
be. It could be, but it's not. It's not an assumption. So let's jump to the Stoic. This is a perfect segue. So the Stoic we grabbed from your book, from this section of the book, the retaining section, and you say adapt your strategies for the next generation, and other companies will be forced to keep up with you. And that's what you're talking about, is switching models. And you talk a lot about the different models in your book, and I loved going through and just having them drawn out. Actually was really helpful for me. But how does this model for employee retention, whatever it is currently, how does it need to shift, or what's the starting place for shifting to be able to retain those Gen Zers?
Oh gosh, there are so many ways. And the first question whenever I'm working with a company who's like, "Oh my gosh, where do I even start with thinking about my strategy?" is obviously, like anything, we have to identify the pain points. So if turnover is a massive problem for your company, or even if it's just not where you want it to be. I work with a lot of forward-thinking leaders who are just saying, how do I throw the ball where where the receiver is headed, not where they are right now? There's, a lot of people are just thinking, how do I make sure I'm set up for the future so I don't, end up like Barnes and Noble where I'm, had to cut my revenue got cut. I think the statistic was since 2012, Barnes and Noble's revenue has gone from 5 to 3 billion. So like in just that short, in just a few years, they've had to cut by half. So you don't end up like them where you're already pretty much dying.
Right.
If you are in that position, you're just in like, how in the world do I figure out what's next? First thing is to identify pain points. So one of the things that I actually love doing, and this is an unofficial release of the work that I've been doing with a company recently, but I'm basically going into companies and mystery shopping their challenges here. So understanding, where are those pain points? Where is the Gen Zer losing connection with the company, and what are the reasons for that shift? So the first step is to identify where is that point. And one just very data-based way to look at this, and I talk about this in the book. I'll find the chapter if I can, but it's essentially the idea of identifying the key turnover point in your organization. So for many companies, they have, if they're doing things really well, they've got a great onboarding process at the beginning. They have great training that introduces the employee to, their mission, their values, and helps the employee succeed. You think, of a Biltmore or a Disney or Zappos, companies that are very good about that onboarding. But what a lot of companies, even who are doing that very well, miss is that their key turnover point, depending on the industry, likely happens 9 to 15 months into the employee journey. So for some companies, about the 9-month mark, they've noticed there's a spike in turnover, and particularly with young people. And they wonder, like, what is that coming from? So my challenge to you, if you're in that position, or even if that spike is, small for you, but it's distinguished from other phases of turnover, ask yourself at that time in the employee journey, what's happening? Is it that the employees have just gotten through, over the hump of their first 6 months and they finally understand how to do their job, but they're losing excitement about what the job actually is?
Right.
Are they finding that at that 9-month mark, they are, maybe your company has policies where they rotate offices and it's throwing them off balance? Whatever that,
or they're not rotating offices and they're getting bored, right?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah,
So
there's not one size fits all solution for this, is what you're saying.
Correct. So what I would say is whatever that turnover point is for you, wherever that peak is happening,
Mm-hmm.
identify the root causes, whether it's through a survey or talking with key managers or looking at exit interviews.
Mm-hmm.
Determine what that problem is. And then what one suggestion I love to make to companies is have an intentional training that you build, a training day, an escape from the office that you intentionally build for your staff and brand it something that's,
Right. Right.
exciting.
Not training day. Right.
No,
Yeah.
not training day. It's something
Right.
like you want your employees to look forward to this time.
Yeah.
They get to go through the second phase of
Yeah.
onboarding where they get to be
Something summit,
reinvigorated.
something,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Or like, career growth summit or something. Serve them lunch, make
Mm-hmm.
it special, and then help use that tool to subconsciously reinvigorate your employees in what the
Mm-hmm.
company is about and how they're
Yeah.
contributing to the vision.
Absolutely. And Jake just shouted out, and it says, are they just done learning around that time? Is
That's a
that
great
is that a possibility?
It's a great question, Jake. If I understand your question correctly, if someone gets to the point where that turnover is happening, I could certainly say in some roles, especially if you're looking at, say, fast food service or some type of job that is very tactical oriented, absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
they could simply be getting bored and tuning out, right?
Yep.
But I think a little bit deeper in your question. So if you're working with, say, white collar staff, and this is a problem, your key turnover point is happening, say, at 12 months, and they're in a role that is, not that technical oriented. Maybe they're a manager. Maybe you're working with accountants or lawyers, and you're finding that at that 12-month point, they're just leaving and going to work for another
Mm-hmm.
competitor, or maybe they're starting their own business. I would dig deeper into some of those underlying root causes. Is it a management problem?
Mm-hmm.
Is it that they're not getting the next level of training, or maybe they don't see their career progressing? Is it that they got a great offer somewhere else and you need to reconsider your pay structures?
Yep.
There's so many questions you
Yep.
should be asking right
Yep.
there.
So we're winding down on time, but I have one quick question. It was a follow-up to all this, and it was in the book. With this group being either, and I read different things. This is an anxious generation. And is it just they're owning their anxiety that all of us have had all along and they're just the ones being honest about it? Or are there causes to have more anxiety for this group? But there is more anxiety. So take that as, yes, it's a norm. How does the fear and anxiety play into the future of retention strategies? And 60 seconds or less.
Man, 60 seconds. Good job, Michael.
So yes, it exists. And then
Yes, it absolutely exists. If you're an employer and you want Gen Z to feel safe in your organization because they are dealing with fear and anxiety, I'd be taking a hard look at how you support mental health. Mental health is a big conversation right now, and thank God we're finally realizing this is a
yes,
problem.
yes.
I would be finding ways to connect your staff with help programs, with therapists, making sure managers know how to talk about all of this with their staff. We've been missing that. So I think to answer your question, Michael, like this, people as humans, we do deal with fear and anxiety as a whole. And of course, if you look at the statistics, it's starting earlier and earlier and earlier that those
Mhm.
fear inducing or anxiety inducing
Mhm.
things come into our lives at age 6, 7, 8. Look at the body image studies of young
Mhm.
girls now.
Yep.
So just
Yep.
all of those things play into it. So my best advice would be, if you're a manager listening,
Yep.
it's not the company's responsibility to help with this, it's yours, and you can be that leader that helps that student or that intern or that employee address it.
Yeah, and it's so important, so important. Well, thank you so much for uh, the just being with us and continuing to to be a champion for this generation coming up. And as we've talked about before, I I am of the having spent a lot of time in generational theory. My starting place is always that I have a lot to learn from the generations that follow. So I've been excited about all these conversations. So if you have not gone out and grabbed the book, it's A Leader's Guide to Unlocking Gen Z, Insider Strategies to Empower Your Team. It's a good read. It's a relatively quick read. It's more of a handbook from my lens, that's really practical with really great stories and stuff that you can take away right now. What can you do right now? And I love all of that. So thank you, Hannah, and we'll have you back just in a few weeks after the holidays, and we'll continue the conversation into the engagement piece of it, which I think is another huge conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Michael.
Absolutely. So everybody else, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to more conversations with you. If you want to connect with us more, you can go to mofi.co. That's where you can find us. You can also contact us on LinkedIn. And Shawn Nason's website is there as well. Hannah is available in LinkedIn if you need to look her up as well. And then if you are interested in joining us, we are always looking for people to come join us on the show to be able to spread the word about what experience ecosystems do in the world. So thank you to everybody, and reach out to us. Let's keep creating our own experience revolutions out in the world and being able to make a difference for everybody. So thank you. Happy holidays, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.